All right, it is 6:30, Tuesday, June 9th, and I'm calling this meeting of the Common Council of the City of Wausau to order. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Everybody here, your buttons are working, so feel free to use that for roll call.
Which one are you going to use?
And we see you, Tom.
The green button, yes, the green button,
This one?
Oh,
yes, yes.
oh! I have misled you and myself. We'll go through roll call with Leslie.
Peckham,
Carl, get out of here.
Martins,
Here.
Killian. Alder Killian,
Here.
Neal,
Here.
Wadinsky,
Here.
Mcelhaney, Rasmussen,
Here.
Watson,
Here.
Herbst,
Here,
Larson,
Here.
Ryan,
Here.
and all members are present.
All right, so next on our agenda is proclamations. So I hope you like listening because I have 5 of them. So I'm just gonna get started here. Our first proclamation is for Flag Day. Whereas on June 14th, 1777, the flag of the United States was adopted by resolution of the Second Continental Congress, and whereas the American flag invokes pride in our citizens and hope in those to come to our shores in search of a brighter tomorrow, whereas we celebrate Flag Day with a sense of pride and strength as a nation, and we reflect on the symbolic representation of freedom and opportunity, and whereas the flag of the United States has accompanied our fighting men and women for hundreds of years on the battlefields, and whereas with hands over our hearts, Americans of all backgrounds and beliefs have saluted Old Glory and honored its legacy. Now therefore, I, Katie Rosenberg, Mayor of the City of Wausau, do hereby proclaim the observance of Flag Day on June 14th, 2020, and ask that people of our great city honor our flag and the men and women of the armed services who have served under it. Wherever the flag lies or flies, the message is clear. We rise and fall together as one nation and one people. And I just wanted to let you know there is a small private Flag Day celebration on Sunday with the Elks Lodge. So I'll be giving this to them. Second proclamation is Juneteenth. Whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, declaring the slaves in Confederate territory free, paving the way for the passage of the 13th Amendment, which formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas news of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation was delayed 2.5 years to June 19th, 1865, in reaching authorities and African Americans in the South and Southwestern United States. And whereas June 19th has special meaning to African Americans and is called Juneteenth, combining the words June and 19th, and has been celebrated by the African American community for over 150 years. And whereas Juneteenth is the oldest known celebration commemorating the abolition of slavery, and whereas Juneteenth reminds us all of the promise of freedom, equality, and opportunity that define the American dream. Now therefore, I, Katie Rosenberg, Mayor of the City of Wausau, do hereby declare June 19th, 2020 as Juneteenth, and in the City of Wausau, and urge all citizens to become more aware of the significance of this celebration in African American history and the heritage of our nation. Next up, proclaiming June as Pride Month in Wausau. Whereas Wausau supports the rights of every citizen to experience equality and freedom from discrimination, and whereas all people, regardless of age, gender, identity, race, ethnicity, religion, marital status, national origin, sexual orientation, or physical abilities, have the right to be treated on the basis of their intrinsic value as human beings, and whereas the Marathon County 2019 Life Report identifies a key goal to create a community that is diverse, inclusive, and everyone has a sense of belonging, and calls for leadership to ensure that Wausau and Marathon County are open, inclusive, and diverse places to live, work, and whereas the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law reported in January 2019 that 3.8% of the population of Wisconsin identifies as LGBTQ+, And whereas the 2019 Economic Development Strategic Plan, completed by TIP Strategies of Austin, Texas, commissioned by the Wausau Region Chamber of Commerce, identified talent recruitment as a fundamental component of economic success, stating that competing successfully for top-tier talent will require the greater Wausau region bring in non-traditional workers to attract and retain skilled workers from outside the region. And whereas June 28, 2020 marks the 51st anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising, which is generally recognized as the turning point in the struggle for civil rights of the LGBTQ+ community. And whereas in 1982, Wisconsin was the first state to ban discrimination based on sexual orientation in employment, housing, education, credit, and all public accommodations. When signed into law by Governor Lee Dreyfus, he said, It is a fundamental tenet of the Republican Party that government ought not intrude on the private lives of individuals where no state purpose is served, and there is nothing more private or intimate than who you live with and who you love. And whereas we recognize that diversity and inclusiveness is key to the future economic and social success of Wausau, and whereas we recognize and embrace the responsibility for the City of Wausau to set a positive example for community, ensuring that our employment practices and work environments are respectful of all people, regardless of age, gender, identity, race, color, religion, marital status, national origin, sexual orientation, or physical challenges. I, Katie Rosenberg, Mayor of the City of Wausau, do hereby proclaim June as Pride Month in Wausau. Whew. Fourth proclamation is June Dairy Month. Whereas the City of Wausau is situated in the heart of Marathon County, which is the largest county in the state of Wisconsin, with an area of 1,584 square miles and 135,341 residents. It has a wide variety of industrial plants which manufacture more than 50 different products, including dairy products, ranked as one of the most important. And whereas Marathon County is one of the leading dairy-producing counties in the state of Wisconsin and the nation, currently the second in milk production in Wisconsin. And whereas farmers throughout our surrounding area are promoters of the family farm and provide a good sense of dedication and work ethic for our youth. And whereas the dairy industry is responsible for 11,021 jobs in Marathon County and is the largest county agriculture, contributing to a total of $2.8 billion in the local economy annually. Now be it therefore resolved that I, Mayor Katie Rosenberg, proclaim June as Dairy Month in the City of Wausau, encourage all to salute the dairy farmers and the dairy industry for their contributions to our economy and to our dairy health. Last one, this is a joint proclamation between Wausau and the City of Stevens Point, our first, but probably not our last. We're declaring it Roller Derby Month since the Mid-State Sisters of Skate had to cancel their season this year, so it's tough on everyone. Whereas the Mid-State Sisters of Skate Roller Derby League was founded in June of 2010 in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, and is celebrating its 10th year as a competitive nonprofit roller derby league in Wisconsin. And whereas Mid-State Sisters of Skate was founded to foster personal growth and community service for its athletes in central Wisconsin, and whereas Mid-State Sisters of Skate has obtained and maintained membership on the Women's Flat Track Roller Derby Association as a full member in good standing, and whereas Mid-State Sisters of Skate has supported local nonprofit organizations by donating thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours to community service in Stevens Point, in Portage County, in Wausau, and Marathon County, and whereas Mid-State Sisters of Skate Roller Derby has hosted teams from all over the U.S. and from Canada in Stevens Point and central Wisconsin, and whereas Mid-State Sisters of Skate have provided training and competitive opportunities for the men and women of Stevens Point and surrounding areas, and whereas Mid-State Sisters of Skate continues to uphold its reputation of that of central Wisconsin in the state, national, and international roller derby community. Now therefore, I, Katie Rosenberg, Mayor of the City of Wausau, do hereby proclaim June 2020 as Roller Derby Month in the City of Wausau and partner with Mayor Mike Wiesa in the City of Stevens Point in recognition of the hard work and dedication to the sport and to the community of Stevens Point and Wausau and the surrounding central Wisconsin area. All right. Next on our agenda, pre-registered citizens for matters appearing on the agenda and other public comment. I'll start with Tim Thurs. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Tim Thurs from Wausau Youth Baseball, and my address is 1800 Bainbury Court. Thanks again for having me back. I apologize for some of the repeat information that I provided to the Parks group earlier, but there is some new information as well, so hopefully if you bear with me, it'll be a short little talk here. I'd like you to consider allowing us to schedule the fields for Little League for this year. I know they're open, but there is a goofy clarification whether they're open or whether we have the right of way to actually use them if somebody else happens to be using them at a time where we'd schedule a game and show up. So I'm looking for a clarification on that. Again, our fields are all separate. As much as I've worked with Miss Polly on trying to get us a facility where we can all be together, very similar to a East Bay complex, our parks are in the perfect situation for keeping our gathering size small. We play individual games at Memorial, at Schofield, at Boilo, at Airport Park. All these fields would host one game per day on any given night, so there wouldn't be an exchange of kids or an exchange, or bring one game in at 5, another game in at 7. It's literally an individual game at an individual field for an individual time, which is absolutely kind of what we're looking for as far as keeping that gathering small. I've also submitted to Ms. Polly a document on other precautions we can take, and I know I told the Parks Committee that we think we have now enough helmets where we can assign a helmet for a kid for the entire season. There is no exchanging of helmets within the dugout. We believe we have enough catching equipment, provided that the coaches manage it to the point where maybe only 2 or 3 kids play catcher on a given day. We can manage that as well. A lot of our parks are also excellent for the fact that the doors don't actually open into the dugout, they open adjacent to the dugout. So as you come in and off the field, you can go left or right into the dugout or along the fence line. And again, it makes social distancing really easy at these parks. I will again reiterate that as far as I know, Everest, Mcelhaney, and now Marathon, I believe is new, and Edgar is new from when I addressed the Parks Committee earlier, as all of them are going to play baseball as far as I know this year. They've announced plans, and some starting in June, some starting in July. It is, while we are different from the pools in the fact that, yeah, if we close our pools, you can go to Weston. These kids in Wausau cannot do that, right? If we even took 50 kids to any of these other programs, they would overwhelm those programs because they only have the requisite number of fields for their number of kids. So it is very hard to do that for the kids. They either have the opportunity with Wausau or they don't have it at all. One final point, again, I talked about registrations at the Parks meeting. I've had less than 15 now cancel, and more than likely, they are not canceling because of COVID. They are canceling because I moved the season from May and June to July and August, and they are busy in those times. Some of it overlap with soccer, but primarily they're citing vacations and other reasons, and not really because of COVID. These, like I said, we have 600 registrations. These parents are staying with us as far as I know, right? They are not canceling. They don't think it's not safe. They're the ones with the most at risk. They're the ones with grandparents that want to come to the games. I believe they are taking their families into account, not just for themselves, but for the greater community, because they have people that they have to protect. I believe everyone does. So, and finally, if you're on the fence at all about this, I believe you should vote in favor of it. And the reason for that is it's kind of like a snow day. You can't call a snow day, cancel, and then find out there's no snow overnight and start it up again just at the drop of a hat. I need the time, and we're running like in 4 weeks right now, to organize umpires, get coaches training on the new procedures, get them equipment, and get the field scheduled, and allow the kids a couple days of practice so their arms are warmed up and they can play a game before we start a season. It's very hard to cancel it and then start it again. So if you are on the fence, please vote in favor today, and knowing that anything could happen in the future, and there's always an opportunity to do something down the road if we find a spike or something else. please vote in favor, and if you have any questions, I'll be in the back.
Thank you. Next up, Jay Stahl. If you could state your name and your address for the record.
I'm just going to lower this. My name is Jay Stahl, and I've spoken to Leslie about why I'm not going to list my address tonight, but I am a resident of the city of Wausau. As I said before, my name is Jay Stahl, and I advocate for children and everyday families across the Wisconsin Valley. A year ago, residents across the city of Wausau, Marathon County, and the entire region came in droves to support the Marathon County Board's Pride Month resolution at the Marathon County Courthouse in downtown Wausau that was authored by then Supervisor and now Mayor Rosenberg. Today, we commemorate that progress and acknowledge how much more important work there is to do. There are kids I've met in this city who've told me that being found dead would be less painful than changing in locker rooms or going in public with someone who they love. It's up to us, though, in this city, today and going forward, to change that. And as the mayor recognizes Juneteenth tonight, a day that eradicated slavery and ended a horrible, heartbreaking stain in our union's history, so many of us across this nation are mourning the loss of George Floyd's life in Minneapolis. It's why I recall the values I learned in church pews my entire life growing up on the East Side: to listen, even when you disagree, love when you don't understand, to know where you stand, and always stand up for others. May I ask for those of you here tonight that hold power, that sit in the audience, that are listening over WebEx, and citizens watching at home, I hope you'll hold those values in your hearts and recommit to learning, listening, and giving the same attention to opening swimming pools that you would to learning more about a neighbor or listening to an experience you may not understand. Thank you so much, and thank you, Mayor Rosenberg, for your recognition of those.
Thank you, Jay. Last, I have Judith Miller.
Judith Miller, 903 Kickbush Street of Wausau. Nice to see you all in person at last. I'm here to speak about the pool issue. And the reason I bring this up is I am concerned. I understand Park and Rec has voted in favor as I watched the meeting of opening the pools, while Public Health and Safety has voted against. I myself do not favor opening the pools. I would first of all point out that Park and Rec has heard more than once the recommendations of the CDC, of the State Department of Health, and of our local Marathon County Health Department, all of which recommendations were do not open the pools. It is too dangerous. Schofield, as I understand it, voted yesterday not to open the pools. Madison does not have their pools open. Appleton does not have their pools open. I can only imagine how many pools there are in Madison. I would point out to those who think we should open that in the summers of 55 and 56, before the polio vaccine was available, no one was letting their children go in bodies of water because it was thought at the time that's how you got polio. No children died from not going swimming, and their health was protected. I would also like to point out, as I have once before, many people think coronavirus is what this virus is. Corona is the family of viruses to which this virus belongs. One coronavirus causes the common cold, for instance, which is hardly fatal. COVID-19 is the disease that you get from this virus. This virus is SARS, covariant 2, a very dangerous disease about which we know very little and with which we have little experience. We do not know, for instance, one of the things that has occurred to me, but I have not heard people speak of, is this. As chickenpox can cause shingles later, as HIV can live within the body for 10 to 20 years before symptoms are expressed. As polio can come back on you, something we did not know, and I would point out, if you're not familiar with it, a case with which I was quite familiar since I worked for the man, Peter DeSantis, 30 years after his original infection, had polio return. In exposing children to this virus in a pool where I ask myself, what are they going to do, stand 6 feet apart and play with their Tonka toys? Part of being in a pool is the roughhousing, the horseplay, the spontaneous kind of eruption of that sort of horseplay that will certainly not be permitted under these conditions because it is too dangerous, as we all realize. As I said, do you want to expose children to something that could possibly come back on them 10, 20 years from now? And possibly to this multi-organ system infection that has been linked to COVID-19. I hope that you will vote to keep the pools closed. It may not be pleasant, but I think it is the most responsible and the most responsible and probably the safest thing to do. I would rather see us be safe now than sorry later. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another? I'm going to turn it over to Leslie, who has a lot of comments.
So thank you, Mayor Rosenberg. I received several comments through email submitted as public comment for tonight. So I'm just going to go through. So file number 20-0612 regarding the opening of athletic fields for organized sports. I received 19 emails that were received with comments in support of opening the athletic fields to allow for organized sports. The emails were received from Tim Thurs, Gary Stockwell, Amy Dykstra, Jen Fictum, Paul Reinerson, Paul Kildee, Desi Clammer, Candy Thurs, Brian Fendos, Paul Rye, Amanda Shute, John Winter, Melissa Stockwell, Luke Rodemeyer, Jody City, Sarah Worth, Gage Stockwell, Chip and Barb Winter, and Garrison Stockwell. And all of those emails were submitted to all the council members before this meeting. On file number 20-0613 regarding opening the pools in the city of Wausau, I received 2 emails with comments in support of opening the pools. These emails were received from Jamie Rye and Sarah Worth. On file number 20-0604 regarding rezoning at 512 Franklin Street, I received 1 email, and that was received from Krista Salas in support of the proposed rezoning.
And I guess I forgot to mention that Pat Peckham was asked to read a comment as well.
Thank you. Former Alderman Dave Nutting had some technical issues, and he opted to send me an email message and asked me to read it. He couldn't get it to everybody. And I'm going to read that, and I will tell you that it contains some vintage Nutting-isms. Dear Honorable Council members, Joy and I are sincerely grateful for your service to your districts and the greater Wausau area. Being well acquainted with soul-searching and difficult decisions in my nearly 12 years of council service, I empathize with you as you consider opening our amazing neighborhood municipal quality of life pools. Please forgive my absence as my tasks prevent my personal delivery of this message of thanks and my request. The facts about our great community pools are that these clean, sunshiny, hot, chlorinated, rained-on, windy, washed-down outdoor environments are so completely opposite of an indoor, low-ventilated, calm, subdued, lighting, infrequently cleaned, walled-in room. No doubt that if one person exhaled just one deep drag off a cigar into the council chambers right now, you would all be aware of it in short order. Families of young children are the majority of pool attendees. They arrive and find their area to plant their blankets or stake out their home base to watch the little ones enjoy these amazing neighborhood amenities. This great Wausau feature is very safe and chlorinated to proper specs so that even these swim-diapered toddlers are not a problem with their unplanned weeings. Told you. My ratings here are not emotional but factual. Our outdoor pool environments are safe to open. Our citizen guests will space themselves appropriately, and healthy Wausau residents will come out. No doubt some won't at this time, their choice. Let's end this particular talk of closing and cancellation waves, as the argument of unsafe environments to include outdoor pools is simply all wet. Marathon County and Wausau residents as a whole are healthy, and our families are eager to press COVID's head underwater and enjoy the next 2.5 months of hot weather relief at our safe environment pools. Even the Wisconsin Dells indoor and outdoor water parks are opening. Let's open all three and let the joy of our little neighborhood water parks leak out and flow again. We need this. The majority want this. Thank you for serving once again, and I look forward to greeting you in person someday soon. Blessing, former Alderperson David Nutting.
Okay, thank you. We're moving on to our next agenda item. Oh, just kidding.
Here, do I have a
Alder.
right to read a letter from one of the constituents regarding the pools?
Sure, I mean, or we can wait until, do you want to wait until we get to the discussion?
We can do that.
It's up to you. Pat and I talked earlier about this.
Okay, sure, we can do that. We can
Okay.
wait till later. That'd be fine.
Okay, that sounds good. We have our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to, oh,
I would like to pull file 20-0.
can you use your mic, please?
I'd like to pull 20-0610, please.
20-0610, and that is the last, it is the ordinance repealing and replacing subsections A and B.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, without opposition, I'll pull that and we'll vote on it separately. Do I have a motion for approving the consent agenda aside from file number 200610? Motion by Peckham, second by Herbst. Can we vote with the system or is it roll call? All right, we will vote. Leslie will call the roll.
Peckham,
Yeah, aye.
Martins,
Aye.
Killian,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Wodinski,
Aye.
Mcelhaney,
Aye.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Watson,
Aye.
Herbst,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to file number 200610, the ordinance repealing and replacing subsections A and B of section 15.24.010, boundaries. Do I have a motion in favor? Motion by Rasmussen, second by Martins. Is there any discussion? Yes, Alder Ryan.
I was just looking at the map, and Bill, could you speak about the map? I guess I had a concern, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it up before this, but I guess over the last 10 years or more, I was under the impression that the old dairy at Alexander and Second Avenue had their north wall was shared with the Salvation Army shelter. So I was wondering, would you want to include that property as well?
Okay, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. We're not hearing you, Bill. One moment.
That's on his end.
Oh. We can hear Tom, but we can't hear Bill. So, Bill, do you have anything? Do you want to chat to Michelle? This might be a little odd, but we'll read it. Just wondering if possibly Eric Lindman, maybe? Do you? No, okay, we'll wait.
The point I'm making is that the boundaries just end to the south of the dairy property, and so it just seems that, at least I'm aware of the dairy property at Second Avenue and at Alexander, on the north side of Alexander, that does have, on the northern portion of the wall between the Salvation Army shelter. Christine Van den Yacht had told me about 10 years ago that her wall is the only wall between the two properties.
Excuse me, Alder Ryan. Bill said that he met with the fire department and went over that block by block. I'm hoping that maybe Chief Kujawa could chime in on this.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that Bill can't get on, huh?
I can see his face.
We walked through this area, the fire marshal and actually Bill went through this area, and we both agreed that the districts that were actually created were safe and appropriate. So I guess that's what I can comment on that. I guess I can't comment specifically on that building. Bill might be able to comment better on that because he's got more experience with that. But I know that we actually, actually went together and determined that this was appropriate.
Thank you. I have another comment here from Bill. It says David DeSantis was also on that review committee and he served on the Salvation Army board. He is familiar with that block and building specifically. I don't know if that quells your concerns.
Okay, I guess if, in the future, that could be addressed. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on this item? Otherwise, are we ready to vote on the ordinance repealing and replacing subsections A and B? All right, we're ready to vote.
Ryan?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wadinsky?
Aye.
Mcelhaney?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to file number 200603, mayor's appointments. If I could have a motion to accept them. Motion by Watson, second by Herps. Is there any discussion? I think we're ready to vote.
Mcelhaney? Wadinsky?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to file number 191109. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee authorizing the modification of fees to the City of Wausau fees and licenses schedule adopted pursuant to the Wausau Municipal Code 3.40.01A, 2020 Comprehensive Fee Schedule. Do I have a motion in favor? Motion by Rasmussen, second by Wadinsky. Any discussion? All right, I think we're ready to vote.
Mayor, I just wanted to ask if this was the resolution we wanted to talk about regarding if we wanted to make certification.
So we did have a discussion, I see Mary Ann is in the back. Do you want to maybe discuss a little what we talked about? We had talked about this, this is the one that gives breaks to the license holders. And we talked about maybe if they do get a break in that fee, requiring them to follow CDC recommendations. It was an idea. I don't know if you wanted to.
Sure. Just that I had been doing some research of what other communities were doing, and that was something that I had mentioned to the mayor, that there were a couple of communities down in the Milwaukee area that if people, to qualify for the discount, that they had to certify that they would follow the CDC and WEDC guidelines for safe reopening.
Yes, Alder Rasmussen.
Is that something that we would have them attest statement on the application?
Yes,
Okay, so that would be easy enough for them to complete. We wouldn't have to,
right,
subject them to any other evaluation criteria after the fact?
right.
Okay.
I see that Alder Killian has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one comment just on this agenda item broadly, and that is I intend to support this, and in the future, I think it would be positive if this body also entertained a diverse set of fee modifications in this difficult period to support local businesses. So I will certainly support this and hope that in the future, the set of fee modifications is broadened even further. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. With that, then, I will offer an amendment to this item that those license holders receiving the fee reduction would attest through an application statement that they will follow CDC and WEDC safe reopen guidelines. If we could get a second for that.
A motion. Would I have a second by Wadinsky? Is there any discussion on this amendment? Okay, I think we're ready to vote on the amendment to the resolution.
Okay. So again, we are voting on the amendment to the resolution. Mcelhaney?
Aye.
Wadinsky?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
All right, so now we are on to the resolution as amended, modifying the fee schedule. Is there any further discussion on this resolution as amended, or are we ready to vote? Looks like we're ready. Oh. Alder Killian, do you have a point you'd like to make?
My apologies, Madam Chair. I did not lower my digital hand. Thank you.
It's okay. Just want to make sure you get to say everything. All right, we're ready to
Thank
vote.
you.
Ryan?
Pardon me?
We're voting on the resolution as amended, the fee schedule.
Okay. All right, thank you. Aye.
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wadinsky?
Aye.
Mcelhaney?
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
All right, thank you. We are moving on to file number 200611. It's a resolution from the Parks and Rec Committee approving following the CDC guidelines with respect to playground facilities and signing them closed. Do I have a motion by Alder Neal? Do I have a second? Second by Alder Watson. Is there any discussion on this topic? It looks, discussion. Alder Larson.
So it is my understanding that the playgrounds will be open, but the signage will be up?
Yes, this is to say that they are closed, and the signs will read that they're closed.
But they're not going to be enforced if people, that was my understanding, I believe, at the Parks meeting.
Right,
that-
yes,
that
I
it's
would not
something
direct
that-
police
It's something
officers.
that's just more or less of a formality than anything else, because it really can't be enforced if people are on the playground.
I'm gonna let Alder Rasmussen maybe touch on this topic.
Thank you. I guess from what I gathered watching the Park and Rec meeting online was that they would sign the playground as closed, but that the playground would not be fenced or taped off, and that people would be notified that if they play on the equipment, that it's not sanitized and that they essentially use at their own risk. Is that where you left off with Jamie's nodding? So not fenced, but, we're certainly not throwing the door open and inviting all to come and certifying them as safe, per se.
Do you have more comment from anybody?
I just had a question. Make sure before we vote, we're clear on the motion. Is the motion to adhere to guidelines and not open them?
It says yes, with respect to playground facilities and signing them closed.
Okay, so if we want them open, we would vote no on this motion?
Right, yeah. So right now we have signs up saying they are not sanitized. and play at your own risk.
Okay, if I may, I just would add, I think the Park and Recreation Committee was pleased with the precautions and the provisions that Mr. Thurs mentioned when he came to our meeting, and we're relatively comfortable with organized play.
Yeah,
Oh, that's the
just
next
to
one?
clarify, this is about the playground
Okay.
specifically, slides and
Very good.
things.
I'll hold off on that then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on playgrounds? All right, I think we're ready to vote.
Peckham,
No.
Martins,
Aye.
Killian,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Wedinski,
Aye.
Mcelhaney,
Aye.
Rasmussen,
Aye.
Watson,
Aye.
Herbst,
Aye.
Larson,
No?
Ryan.
Aye.
Motion passes 9-2.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to our next item. It's file number 20612. That's also from the Parks and Recreation Committee approving the opening of athletic fields for organized sports. Do I have a motion? Motion by Neal. Second. Second by Peckham. Ready to talk. I see Neal's light is on, but I can't see Peckham, so I'll let Neal go first and then Peckham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, a lot of the considerations and discussions that went into looking at this item are the same kind that were used in discussing whether or not to open pools. And I find this particular item a lot more comfortable in terms of what I perceive as the ability, when it says organized sports, that there's going to be organization. It's not going to be a melee of kids just, willy-nilly running around. They're under adult supervision, direct supervision, in an organized sport. And they've already expressed that they are taking into account measures to ensure safety. So, and since I've been watching the Ken Burns baseball documentary series for the last couple of weeks, I'm just, gung-ho baseball, so I'm going to vote for this.
Alder Peckham.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to recap that the Park and Rec Committee was pleased with the precautions that are able to be put in place, and I think most of us were pretty comfortable with this, so I hope it passes.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I actually have reviewed their social distancing plan for youth baseball as well, and received a volume of public feedback, as we all did, about utilizing sports fields and organized baseball. My son has played organized baseball since the age of 5. That's 10, 11 years now. And I've literally been to every one of our facilities and have watched an awful lot of youth baseball. And the things that they have changed within their program, I think, address the things that we are trying to promote to keep players safe. Distancing in the dugout, moving the home plate umpire, no sunflower seeds, no gum, none of these high fives, these things that kids do just out of reflex. They're managing all of that. The thing that I also would like to see them do is try to manage the spectators in attendance in terms of use of the bleachers. I think they're capable of doing that. Like you said, they're not large crowds, they're one game at a time. But if they're willing to manage the players and their proximity and manage the spectators that come to watch, I think that Tom's right, this is a way more comfortable discussion than pools. We also are not asking our employees to staff these areas while they're full of people or people are there. So I think this is a safer decision for us to make. And I think that they're capable. Obviously, when you book youth sports fields, you also then get soccer. I think those organizations also have taken a proactive approach to play as safely as they can play and make some changes within their program to be as safe as they can be. So I'm going to support this one as well.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? Looks like we're ready to vote.
Mcelhaney. Wedinski.
Aye.
Neal. Killian.
No.
Martins. Peckham. Rasmussen.
Aye.
Watson.
Aye.
Herbst.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-1.
Thank you very much. Moving on now to file number 200613 from the Public Health and Safety Committee. Resolution approving the opening of up to 3 City of Wausau public pools beginning July 1, 2020. As you remember, this failed from Public Health and Safety, but also passed Parks and Rec. So we have some discussion tonight. Do I have a motion?
So Mayor, so we're on the one that approved opening 2.
Oh, we have 2 of them. Okay, apologies. So we're actually we're voting on the first one that was approved to the Parks and Rec. Resolution approving the opening of 2 of the city's 3 swimming pools for the 2020 summer season. Do I have a motion? Anybody want to motion this one? Do I have to ask 3 times? Oh, I've got a motion by Neal. Do I have a second? Got a second by Peckham. Is there any discussion on this? Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. After the Park and Rec Committee met and recommended the opening of 2 pools, we had some discussion both with the park staff and in the interest of safety. Public Health and Safety looked at this item, the pool item in general, in terms of exactly that, health and safety, not necessarily operational logistics. With that, the park staff has funding in their budget by shifting a couple line items to fund operations at all 3 pools if this council would choose to open them. They believe that they will be staffed properly to operate all 3 pools. And so if your will in this item or the next one is to open pools, it is Public Health and Safety's hope and Finance's hope that you would vote then to open all 3 of them to thin out the attendees between 3 facilities and not shuttle them into 2, and then go through the pain of trying to decide which pool you're going to close and which neighborhood won't have the opportunity. So that said, based on public feedback I've received, my district is telling me that even though we have a pool in our district, with the exception of 2 or 3 respondents, the other ones, the majority that had responded to me, said that taking a year off of swimming based on the pandemic makes sense, and they certainly understand if we opt to keep the pools closed. But if you're on the side of wanting to open pools, it would be my hope that you would vote this item down then and vote for the other item that opens them all, rather than try to shoehorn that crowd into 2, or whoever comes into 2 facilities only. Thank you. If you're not if you're not into opening the pools, vote them both down. But the 3 is certainly a healthier option or a safer option to thin out those groups.
Thank you. I have Alder Peckham, Alder Neal, and then Alder Ryan. So Peckham.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I'm comfortable with going with Lisa's suggestion. Knock this one down and get to the next one. And the wording on the next one is opening of up to 3. So that if they can open 3 comfortably, they would go for that. And if it's not possible with staffing or whatever, that 2 would also be acceptable. So I like that one. I hope we vote this one down and get on to the next one.
All right, Alder Neal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I proposed in the Park and Rec Committee meeting to do this 2 pool maximum, mainly out of a concern about staffing. You know, the Parks Director, not to put words in Ms. Polly's mouth, but essentially, you know, had a big concern about the ability to control kids, you know, and my thought was, that would require more staffing. Now, we're not financed to add extra staffing to 3 pools, so my thought was, let's go ahead and take staff from a 3rd pool and divide them up among the other 2 pools, so we would have more people on hand, on the deck, in the water, whatever, to help, you know, herd those cats in the water. So I was pleased that was approved. I'm still torn about this subject as a whole in terms of opening pools, though. In the interim, we've seen in the news just here in the last day or 2 that spikes are continuing to happen throughout the country. tonight's news had a story about more verification that asymptomatic transmission is a concern. Much of the emails we received are, from parents saying, these are my kids and I'll take responsibility and, and that. But I don't see a lot of discussion among those people about their concern about their kids becoming disease vectors and spreading the disease even though they're asymptomatic. So it really bothers me that we might be voting to open pools without the level of certainty I think we really need to in all good conscience, make that decision. The numbers are continuing to go in the wrong direction. A lot of the emails seem to purport facts that they've seen or read or feel, but I turn towards the professionals, and I really have to bow to what we're hearing from the CDC and Health and Human Services, Marathon County Health Department. So even though I voted for going to 2 pools, I'm going to vote against this tonight. I'm also going to, and if we go to the opening 3 pools, I'll vote twice against that one. So there you have it. Thank you.
Thank you. I will go to Ryan, then Rasmussen, then Watson. Alder Ryan. Oh, are you pushing the wrong button? Okay, Alder Larson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. As long as,
I'm also going to not support this opening up 2 pools because I don't want to see anybody in this city discriminated against.
thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. With regard to the staffing concern, we did have a discussion with Ms. Polly in Finance tonight before this meeting. She has located other savings, operational savings within her budget that could be used to fund the additional staff, and they believe they will have adequate staff to operate all 3. Now, as with any active pool season, if they have a shortage, they certainly have the ability, either based on operational or staffing concerns, to choose to close a pool on a given day if they had to. They've always had that ability. But she believed that if we were going to order that they open pools tonight by our vote, that they also would prefer to operate the 3, and they believe that they could do it. So with that, and given the fact that she was able to find the money, our intention in Finance tonight was to find the money either way, so that if the council made that decision, that they were ready for it. Obviously, if the council opts not to, which I'll talk about in the next agenda item, there is some substantial savings by not operating pools at all. And we talked about, if we do that, to go back to the Park Department's CIP list, for example, and look at things that we can do in those neighborhoods to make a positive impact. And perhaps we can, replace equipment at 2 more neighborhood parks that we couldn't have before, or find some, other things that we can do that make an impact beyond swimming. So there are some options if you choose not to open pools at all either, but the staffing concern seems to have gone away.
Thank you. Alder Watson.
And maybe this isn't the time, Lisa, like you mentioned, but I was asking Jamie sort of what the hierarchy was on your projects. Like, is it something you can speak to now, like how much money it would save if we didn't open the pools, and what projects you could actually throw that money at?
For everyone at home, Jamie Pauley, our Parks and Rec Director.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you for asking ahead of time because I was able to pull it up. So as I mentioned, Karen put together our budget, what's budgeted for this year, and then our modified budget. If we did not open the pools this year, that's the question, correct? We would save the levy $123,447. So that money could be used however the council feels that they would like to. Some of the projects that we have coming forward for 2021 that we could move up to this year is the playground replacements is a big one. We are on a 5-year cycle for that. We still have about 6 to 7 more playgrounds to replace. Let me just pull it up really quick. We, city. We have some decking that we need to replace at Barker Stewart Island. We've got some maintenance to Memorial Park seawall that's been on our CIP list for a number of years that it never scores high enough that we could use. We have some operation equipment at our shop that needs updating that will come forward this year. Our hoist right now does not fit most of our equipment, so we need to replace one of those. It's reached its life. We have a portion of the River's Edge Trail that we could put the gravel base down in anticipation for the wastewater treatment plant's upgrade in a couple of years, where then it could be paved. We have some masonry work at Stewart Park that we could put some money towards some of those tuck pointing and repairs. And we have Sylvan Hills parking lot that was on the docket last year too that didn't score high enough, as well as tennis court improvements. Those are what's coming for next year. And then also just for small projects that we have on our list for this year that we won't get to all of them, is some renovations to our soccer fields at Brockmeyer Park, some seeding and regrading. We have ball diamond infields that we could still do even with scheduling the fields. We can work around some of what those need to be. We have shelter updates and a reconstruction of the Schofield Park parking lot. Some secondary, a secondary snow gun is something we're not funding this year, but it's on our list of $25,000 for Sylvan Hill, just to make our operations there more efficient in the winter. So we have a list that we could use.
Are there any other questions? Okay, guess we're ready to vote. Again, this is we're voting on approving opening of 2 of the City of Wausau's 3 swimming pools for the 2020 summer season.
Peckham? No. Martins?
No.
Killian?
No.
Neal?
No.
Wadinsky?
No.
Mcelhaney?
No.
Rasmussen?
No.
Watson?
No.
Herbst?
No.
Larson?
No,
Ryan?
No.
Motion fails.
All right, thank you. We're moving on to our second pool resolution. It's the resolution approving the opening of 2 of the city, or up to 3 of the city's Wausau public pools beginning July 1st, 2020. This is file number 200613 from Public Health and Safety. Do I have a motion? Motion by Larson, second. Second by Herbst. All right, the first person on my docket is Peckham, Alder Peckham.
Thank you. I think this is a very difficult decision, and however it goes, I want to say that I will retain my full measure of respect for all in the room. It's a tough one. I continue to believe that we can open these pools safely. I think if the CDC guideline is a broad guideline, and the state health department, et cetera, if somebody, got them on the phone and said, hey, can we open our pools, they would say very logically, no, that's not a good idea. But I think with the precautions that are being proposed, and I'm sure will be vigilantly followed, I think we can do this. And I came away from last week's meeting, and I'm not sure where it was brought up, but there was a kind of a sentiment going around that if the threat of the virus being spread at the pools were really significant enough, the health department would be doing more than just recommending that they not open. They would be jumping up and down and saying, no, you can't do this. And so I decided to put health department on the spot, and I emailed the bigwigs and asked if the health department had the authority to issue an order and close it. They don't have the authority, all they can do is recommend. So I asked if they had the authority to issue an order, would they do that? And, kind of talk about that. And so Mr. Grosskirth, I'm not sure he's on the line tonight or not, with us, but he responded, and then Ms. Toyer, the department head, the health officer, followed up a little bit, this afternoon. And Mr. Grosskirth said, if Marathon County Health Department had the authority to issue an order, doing so is not taken lightly. An order would not be written to close the pools unless there was cause based on findings at a specific pool or in a community to warrant a temporary closure. The decision would be based on epidemiological findings linking multiple cases to the pool facility and involving what measures would be necessary to prevent, suppress, or control COVID-19 transmission, et cetera, et cetera. And so I wrote back to Mr. Grosskirth and I said, would it be accurate to summarize your statement to say that if the department had the power to close the pools, it would not do so until it had proof that people were picking up the virus there? And I got a response from Joan Toyer, the health officer, and she said, yes, that would be accurate. And if recommendations were not being followed, based on our experience, if we identified cases to a pool, we would work collaboratively to determine additional measures to be taken to control further spread. So found that interesting.
All right, Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. Well, there we have it. I'm glad that Pat asked those questions, because that tells me that if we were to sit and wait for someone to throw down an official order to shut down the pools, that's a reactive measure, not a proactive measure. And what that means is that some people in good faith have already come to our facilities and been sick. And I think that we have to make a decision. You know, this should not be a political decision. This is a decision about the well-being and safety of our community. And as much as it feels good to say yes to people who desperately want something, if we know that the health department came and stood right in front of the Park and Rec Committee and stood right in front of the Public Health and Safety Committee and said, our recommendation has not changed from its original, it has never changed, it's not changing. So whether it's a recommendation or a mandate, when a health department tells you no, no should mean no. And so my concern about this is we're asking our employees to staff these facilities, go out and expose themselves to this situation. And once that spread has started, the horse is out. And so I would certainly hope that if we would vote tonight to open these pools, that we would not wait for an official order to shut the place down. If there's any rumblings that there has been transmission or cases coming from that activity, I would certainly hope our staff would shut them down first. But I also think that we need to recognize something. Ms. Polly and Ms. Powers created an opening plan because they were asked to create an opening plan. Like, what would it take to open our pools if we wanted to open them? They didn't come to us and say, we would love to open all 3 pools and run them all summer during a pandemic. They were asked by one of our committees that supervises them to come up with what this could look like. So they came up with the safest possible idea they could, but I think we should not confuse that with their desire to want the pools open and want to try to manage this situation in the middle of a pandemic. I think that, you know, they've come up with the best possible plan they could come up with in case we decide that we want to do this. But this decision is our decision. It's not based on their urging. It's not based on the health department's urging, and it's certainly not based on CDC recommendations. So if we open them and something goes wrong, that's on us. It's not on them. It's not on the lifeguards. It's not on the social distancing crew. It's not on the neighborhood residents who just wanted something to do all summer. It's on us that made that decision. And that's a tough one. It's hard for us to, the feedback has been a mixed bag. We've been getting emails for 2 weeks that we either should or shouldn't do this. But I think that we have to make a safe choice this time. And no matter what decision we make here, you can guarantee half the people are going to be really unhappy. And the other half will go, okay, I get that. And, you know, I think that we have to have the courage sometimes to say no, even though we also would like to say yes and make people happy. But I feel like we can't do it this time. And then, so in finance, when we delved into what could we do if we didn't run pools? And we found out that you have $123,000 that you could invest in a neighborhood park for a new playground that's ADA compliant, that kids can play on for 20 years. That's a great impact that you could make, still, that residents can see, feel, and use. You know, it's not like we would take, and I guess if we were going to do something like that, I wouldn't want to see us spend it on pavement. I want to spend it on something people can appreciate. Just because if we've taken the pool away, let's give something else that the public can use. And I would certainly advocate for that if we vote this down tonight, but I will not vote to open these pools. The feedback in my district doesn't support it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say in response to Alder Rasmussen that I believe she is absolutely correct, and I echo her sentiments and views, and I see where Alder Peckham is coming from with some of his points and questions to DHS, but I think as Alder Rasmussen said, that is a reactive ex post facto response to issuing an order after a serious problem has already been identified. It is not a preventative, protective response that is proactive. And my position on this will be similar and hopefully consistent with all my positions on health standards, and that is the most protective standard and remedy should be recognized and supported by our body consistently if it is within reason. Now, sometimes that's the DHS, sometimes it's the DNR. There are varying degrees of protection from standards that I believe if it's within reason, then the most protective standard and remedy should be supported. And this did pass, a similar resolution had passed the Parks Committee 4-1 as vice chair. I had voted against that, and it also speaks to or goes to something that Rasmussen had, and that is the Marathon County Health Department attended meeting on both occasions, recommended not opening pools based on health concerns. And while I shared questions with the other citizens about certain models and statistics and how they're qualified or defined on both a national and international level, I currently have no comprehensive alternative data set to safely challenge the health department's recommendation. So with all that being said, as we learn more about this novel virus as time goes on, the facts may change in the future, and therefore it is possible my position will change as the facts change. But given the recommendations that have come down, I will not be supporting opening the local pools. And as one resident said tonight or commented about the polio epidemic, or at the height of the polio problem, this was a concern, not simply because they didn't know precisely how the virus spread, but just as a rather local example in central Wisconsin, in 1946, all it took was one case of mild polio identified in a child before Marshfield shut down its local pool immediately. And I think it's important to remember that none of us takes pleasure in restricting children from local pools, and that the height of the polio epidemic occurred shortly after World War II, and the Spanish flu from 1918 to 1920 occurred shortly after World War I. So it wasn't because people didn't like freedom. Many of those in the communities that were being supportive of safeguarding health were actually World War I and World War II veterans. So today, I think we do this out of an abundance of caution, and we heed these recommendations from health entities in the government. I hope that the situation changes, but until then, I intend to heed the health department's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to let you know that I'll be calling on Mcelhaney, Larson, Herbst, and Watson. Alder Mcelhaney.
Thank you. I agree, this is a really hard decision. I have gotten a lot of feedback. I've asked for feedback. I also, I don't know, maybe some know and don't know, I'm a registered nurse, so I have a medical background, and I've tried to use my analytical medical background in figuring this out. And I can't really, because every day something else is reported. Children aren't carriers. Children are carriers. Asymptomatic people carry it. Now today, asymptomatic people don't carry it. That is the problem with the novel COVID virus. It's a novel virus. We have no historical data of what it is going to do next. That's the scary part. This isn't the flu, it is COVID-19. And that's the scary part. And I have answered emails quite frequently in that what's scary is the people that are dealing with this at the top levels don't know what's going to happen next. Is it going to come back? Is there going to be a second wave? Is it just going to go away? Does sunlight disinfect it? It doesn't seem to be chlorine doesn't seem to be a vector. There's just too many what ifs. We think, it may be. I'm tasked here to look to experts to make my decisions. I use the pools. I would love to have the pools open. This isn't about me not wanting kids to go to pools or families to go to pools. That's not it at all. It is, if I felt safe, I would like to use a pool. But it comes down to, as the other alders have said, we have had Marathon County Health Department here many times. They have not wavered. I have talked to them personally myself as well. I also think it's different than ball fields, because ball fields, I have a real problem tasking our pool employees to go there. They can say they can take a risk. You have to remember, our pool employees are young people. They're young people. They may not even understand the long-term risks, but they are going to be there, and they are going to be tasked with this. Instead of just being in a pool situation, which is frenetic enough, they are going to be tasked with trying to, as Alder Neal said, herd cats and try to continue to keep these children and families socially distant. I can't see how I can, in all good faith, say to some young person, please try to socially distance everybody, and keep reminding them, and God help you if you had some pushback, because I don't know what to do. I don't want that. I am responsible for these employees. I'm responsible if my vote says for them to go. What is our liability there? It's different than the ball fields, because our employees aren't going to be out there when the games are being played. So there is this difference between the pools and playgrounds and parks and I see, baseball games. Now, if we make the decision today, 5 days from now, they're going to say, well, this is lowered now and we should have done it, Or if we do it, something's going to spike. That's just the way it works, So if we say, yes, let's open the pools, all of a sudden we'll have a spike in once the pools are opened, and then we have a problem, or that. That's just Murphy's Law of how this goes. But I guess I have to go into the area of doing more than less, and safer than sorry. And it isn't that I don't trust parents, that they don't want to do what's best for their children. It's not that any of that I don't trust people that have emailed me and said we would socially distance. I believe them fully. But that's this portion. There's a whole other portion of people that I can't guarantee that, and I can't ask our employees to be part of that. So at this point, as hard of the decision as is, I am going to be voting no.
Thank you. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Alder Peckham, for bringing up some facts that you brought up I was not aware of. But one thing I am aware of is that as Marathon County has a population of 135,600 plus people, and I believe to date, there's been around 62 cases of COVID reported with one death in a nursing home. So that, and put that in a percentage, that's 0.0005% of the population in Marathon County. That's really, I shouldn't say non-existent, it's there, but very, very irrelevant. Irrelevant even though it is irrelevant. As I said at the Parks and Recreation meeting, I have received an overwhelming response from my constituents to overwhelmingly, but not anonymous, or not, unanimous, thank you, for opening the pools. And therefore, you know, in this day and age when we're opening up and moving forward, pools are opening up at campgrounds and pools have opened in Weston. I am going to vote to open these pools. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Herbst.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of concerns, and I mentioned them earlier, and I'm going to bring them up again, and I need to get this away so that I can see what I want to read. First of all, we talked about, and I brought it up, how do we track the people that attend these pools once they leave regarding the virus? That was a big concern that we had, because we have no way of tracking once these people leave the pools, who contacted the virus, where did they all go? That is a big concern right there. Then, of course, the fact that we have not even achieved phase 1 yet as of now, and they're talking about the fact that by mid-June, we're not even at phase 3. They said point blank, schools are not open. They're not even open if, they'll be sure if they open. So if they're not sure if they're gonna be open, the schools, why in the world would we wanna open the pools? I also have a letter from one of my constituents. I'd like to know if I'm able to read it.
Go ahead.
This is from Alan Burnett, who lives at 715 Highland Drive, Apartment 3. Dear Ms. Herbst, this is the issue of opening Wausau public swimming pools. The city's public swimming pool should remain closed to all public and all private use for the 2020 season. It is with near disbelief to hear reports of the efforts to open the swimming pools to the public. Such opening being a complete contradiction of the current practice of social distancing, wearing of partial facial coverings, the placement of transparent plastic shields at checkout counters, and limiting the operating hours of such essential municipal service such as Wausau City Hall. Instead, by a narrow margin, the Park and Recs Department has taken a self-serving, yet not unanimous, position to disregard measures to minimize the physical and intermediate air and water contact among individuals by allowing them to commingle their physical bodies within a medium, water, which clearly is not only an unsanitary environment. It is a medium which can rapidly expose and transmit pathogens among those who are immersed in the water and who will be in contact with the water through the nose, mouth, or eyes. Chlorination of the pool water is absolutely no guarantee or pathogen-free water. I am astounded that such a reckless and hypocritical disregard for public safety at this time would be put forth for discussion and shortly vote by the City Council. I urge you to vote against opening the Wausau public swimming pools this season so as to could jeopardize public health and safety. Starting today, I will urge my neighbors to contact you and the mayor's office as I did yesterday. There also has been comment of the Kawasaki disease, and of course, that is quite something rather serious because it involves multiple organ inflammation. I agree with Lisa. I would love to see the money that is not used for the pools this year to be used for other things to give back to the community. So at this point, I have to, on my own part and for my district, I have to vote no for the opening of the pools.
Thank you. Alder Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. For me, I happened to go back to a story that I learned from my grandmother and my mother, who, my mother passed at 90 back in 2009. But she was the oldest in her family, grew up in Norway, Michigan, near Iron Mountain, Michigan. And she had brothers Leslie and Alan Varda, who died in 1925 of an illness at the time they didn't know how to treat it. And they ended up having the funeral in their home and having friends and family come outside and look in the window. So 1925 and now 2020, we're on the verge of really not knowing what it is. And I have a picture that my mom gave me of her parents and my mother, who was the oldest. And you could see in the picture, this might be the last time they are together as a family. They didn't know what was going to happen or if they would survive, and they did. And they did have another child, my Uncle Larry, 9 years later. But I've lived through the AIDS environment. I happen to have a cousin that was one of the first 10 that died of AIDS in California. And I remember the scare of AIDS, of not knowing how it was going to be. We still don't know a lot, and we need to protect our children. We've distanced them, but at this point, the pool is putting them together like a herd of cats, and it's not the right thing to do. I know it's difficult. I have a teenage neighbor next door that just finds it very difficult, but she is surviving. They're talking, they're playing games together, they're texting one another. And another family across the street from me, they've come out with the hose and a slide. And Girl Scouting 50 years ago, we used to do water balloons. So there's other ways of encouraging kids to have some good times, but I would err on going for, we really don't know how this is being transmitted, and we want to save our children. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I just would have one last comment. I know this isn't an easy decision for you, and I know I don't get a vote unless it ties, which I don't think it can. But I was on a call today with the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and this was a big topic. And they took kind of an unofficial poll of all 127 of us on that call. We had administrators and mayors, and they asked us all if we were opening our pools. And 52% of us said that we were not. So you can see that a lot of communities are grappling with this. So you're not alone. But you know, when you take this vote, you need to vote with the science and vote with the facts. You need to vote with the concern for your neighbors, and you really care about them. And obviously, you have to vote with your hearts. You have to do what you think is right. So if there's no more discussion, I guess we're ready.
Peckham?
The vote is 2 open up to 3?
Yeah, the vote in favor would be voting in favor of opening up to 3 pools. Sorry, I could have reread that for us all.
Okay, thank you. I vote yes.
Martins?
No.
Killian?
No.
Neal?
No.
Wadinsky?
No.
Mcelhaney?
No.
Rasmussen?
No.
Watson?
No.
Herps?
No.
Larson?
Yes.
Ryan?
No.
Motion fails, 2-9.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on, we are moving on to item number 200604, a resolution from the Plan Commission. It's an ordinance rezoning 512 Franklin Street from a TF10, it's a 2-flat residential 10 zoning district, to an NMU, a neighborhood mixed-use zoning district. Do I have a motion by Martins, second by Watson? Is there any discussion? Yes, Alder Neal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was approached about this from one of the neighbors early on, and, you know, the petitioners asking for this rezoning are fine people, and I think there's no doubt whatsoever that what they propose to do would be nice. But it is a fundamental change to a historic residential neighborhood in the east side. It's not in my district, but it's darn close. And at such time, and since this rezoning is not just for this petitioner, but for that property, at such time as that business, goes away, there's a lot of latitude for how it might be used by a future business, a lot of latitude that have not been part of this discussion. As I said in a meeting recently, the future users, proposed users of this property, aren't here for us to vet and talk to. They pretty much be grandfathered in on this property. The petition is really based on convenience more than need. There's some resistance to it in the neighborhood, and I can't really support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Martins.
Thank you, Mayor. Reading, the minutes from the Plan Commission and also the staff report here, it's one of the things that was, one of the reasons why we did our zoning code rewrite was to allow new and creative uses for buildings within our communities. And one of the, in some of those workshops and sessions, one of the things that was discussed and identified was the need for mixed use in primarily residential areas in order to, just not only to create density, but a vibrancy in the community. Now, I know that, this may be a special case as it is part of, an identified historical district, but it fits, the use case really fits what we want to do with these properties. And also, it's, I feel like we can't, hold a property owner to task, for what could happen in the future of that property because of what he wants to do, what they want to do for it now. So, it's a small property. It's not, of course, being rezoned as mixed-use commercial, there could be several things that could potentially be done with the space, but because of the size of the space, it would be really limited in its actual use. And I think because of that, the size and those factors, I feel, this would be an appropriate rezoning of that particular space.
Thank you. Alder Ryan.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I happened to drive by there this afternoon, and it happened back about 10 years ago. I was with a group of outdoor women that did a walking tour of the area and visited this actual property, which at the time, I believe it was used primarily as a couple of bunkhouses for winter sports, for people wanting a place to stay and with a hot tub. It is an unusual property that it is quite narrow, quite small, and I believe it still had a wooden boardwalk. So I guess for modifying it for handicapped accessible, I think there would be some other modifications that would need to be. But the property is pretty bare, I guess, compared to other very well landscaped properties, and then it does have parking off the alley. But the parking off the alley is very narrow. And luckily I have a smaller car, but if someone had a larger car, there might have some difficulty trying to get access via the alley, and that there are some ruts in it. So in my opinion, it really isn't designed well to be that kind of a space, and it is very small, and I guess very historic, one of the oldest buildings in the area. But for from my learning in the past at a Forest Park meeting a few years ago, the old hospital has been turned into a lot of office space over on 7th Street near Parcher and in that area. And that I do think there is some better options for people that are looking for retirement information that could have more, better parking options, as well as not being, competing with winter alley use in the winter when we may want to have emergency parking with all cars off the street and that kind of competition. So I think it might be something you would want to consider with other properties, but the property is quite small and quite narrow. And I guess and with the alley entrance and exit as part of the plan, my opinion is no.
Okay, just want to let you know, I'm going to call on Alder Killian, then Herbst, then Peckham. We do have the folks here who are looking for the rezone if you had questions for them. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alder Neal said that this was not in his district, but close. It is in my district, and while I'm not on the Planning Commission, I had been CC'd on an email from a citizen in my district who at one time had some concerns about this rezoning, but perhaps Alder Peckham could speak to this or clarify. It was my understanding that there was not presently any contesting of this from the citizen, and those concerns may have been withdrawn. So on two fronts, I'd like to ask, one, if Alder Peckham has any information that could clarify that in terms of past concerns shared by citizens and what the status may be. And then secondly, are there any citizens of the neighborhood or the district or community present there tonight who have concerns about this rezoning? So if all of those concerns have been withdrawn or are not present this evening, it would be my intent to support this rezoning, but perhaps Alder Peckham could clarify the status at least of the one concern that I had been CC'd on. Thank you.
Sure, Alder Peckham.
May I jump ahead of the line here?
Yes, I think I'll allow it.
Yes, Mr. Killian is correct. My understanding is that the forces who wrote, I think they wrote an individual email to members of the Planning Commission, and then he sent a second email, and the first line of the first one was that we are in complete opposition. But they came to the Planning Commission meeting, they listened to everybody who spoke, and I did reach out to them after the meeting, and I was intending to tell them that, they could still have an opportunity at the council meeting if they wanted to continue to oppose it and try to get it scrapped. I was with Mr. Neal, one of the two votes against the rezone, but Mr. Force explained that he met with the applicant, had a very good conversation, and while they are not cheerleaders for this, they're pretty much withdrawing their opposition, so I plan to vote yes for it.
Thank you. Alder Herbst.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to let you know that I am definitely opposed to this rezoning here from TF10 to 2-flat residence 10 zoning. I think it needs to stay as it is. It's a very beautiful historic neighborhood, and I would like to see it stay that way.
Thank you.
So I will be voting no.
Alder Wodinsky. Oh, Mike.
My question is, this is in a historic district, so do changes have to go before that board if there's modifications to the structure, or?
I see that Brad Lenz is on the line. I don't know if that's something. Brad, do you have any comments? Would any changes to that building have to go through historic preservation?
Well, not all changes, but some may require, and that would apply if it were a residence or a commercial building. It doesn't really matter what the use is, that could be triggered by what the changes are being proposed. If it requires a building permit and is visible from the street, it's external essentially, then it would require review by the Historic Preservation Commission. If it's internal, not visible, it wouldn't necessarily require that certificate. I guess going back to another point made earlier, you know, the petitioner is aware of some of the changes that would need to be made from a building code perspective to make a commercial building, and he's, you know, wants to do those changes. He is willing to do those. He's already looked into some of those modifications. So, but again, the historical part, again, it doesn't really matter use. It just dependent on what the specific external changes are. That answers your question.
Thank you, Brad. Alder Ryan.
I talked with Jim Forrest this afternoon, and like I said, I also went through the alley, and when you look at the map of the property next to it, 504, there's a back garage in the alley, so if you had anyone that may be older with a larger car and not careful, you could easily damage this garage, which is right next door. It is a very narrow alley, and it just, the building is unusual. It's kind of a long, narrow building, so it's kind of vertical on the property instead of being, you know, horizontal. It's just showing a portion of the property, the side view, with the front doors are actually on the side. And when you really look at the alley, it is very narrow, and I would not drive with a Cadillac down that alley unless you plan on having scratches all along the way. So I think it's really difficult property, and if Tom Killian, the alderperson, not satisfied, I would recommend we may want to table it and his taking a look at it.
Is that a motion?
I would do that as a motion.
All right, we have a motion to table this. Is there a second? A second by Tom Neal. All right. I guess we would prefer to table it to a time certain. Maybe the next meeting would be appropriate. Is there any discussion on this? All right, I think we're ready to vote on the motion to table this rezone on Franklin Street.
Mcelhaney? Wadinski?
No.
Neal?
Aye.
Killian?
No.
Martins? No. Peckham? No. Rasmussen?
No.
Watson?
No.
Herbst?
Aye.
Larson?
No.
Ryan?
Aye.
Motion fails 3-8.
Thank you. All right, we're back on the original motion. Is there any further discussion? I think we're ready to vote on this resolution with the ordinance rezone on 512 Franklin Street from TF10 to a neighborhood mixed-use zoning.
Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
No.
Wadinski?
Aye.
Mcelhaney?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Nay.
Larson?
No.
Ryan?
No.
Motion passes 7-4.
Thank you. Moving on next to file number 870220 from the Wausau Waterworks. It's an ordinance amending section 020 basis for charges, and that's the sewer service charges. Do I have a motion? A motion by Rasmussen, do I have a second? Second by Watson. Is there any discussion on this? Alder Ryan.
I guess I would like to get some more definitive of when is the plan for the water and sewage plant to be finished?
Sure, we'll have Public Works Director Eric Lindman will answer your questions.
Good evening. Specifically, yeah, for the completion of the projects, we're looking at later 2022 for both the drinking water and the wastewater facilities.
With the Public Service Commission, Eric, is there some latitude that we could wait until we actually have things near completion instead of going ahead and raising the rates at this time?
No, the Public Service Commission has already implemented the rates for the water. They regulate the water, so they've done the rate case study and they've made their determination. We will be going through on the drinking water side for another full rate case beginning in 2021. So they'll make another determination. It takes them about 6 to 8 months to go through a case. And so there's a couple things next year when we go through with that. We start and submit that to the PSC typically starting in August, and we would anticipate a response sometime maybe March of '22. And so there'd be a couple things we're looking at on the drinking water side. One is, do we need another rate increase based on the borrowing that we have, not only for the facility itself, but our 5-year borrowing plan. The other thing is we're going to, the commission wants to take a look at our actual rate structure and what our balance is as far as the residents, supporting or generating the majority of the revenue versus, commercial, industrial, and other users. We want to make sure that that's balanced. The other thing is we want to try to protect our low income and low water users within the city. Our rate structure has never been looked at that way. And so I believe we have John on the line with Ehlers, but they'll be looking at, for those users that use very little water, that they'll have a lower rate, to help protect them, whether they're low income or just low users. And so there's other communities that have done that, and it's been successful. And so that's something that we're going to look at as well.
Thank you. Is Alder Rasmussen?
Thank you. It is my hope that we will keep all 3 of these items that we have before us tonight, approve them and keep the projects on schedule. Just a reminder that we are under some DNR mandates on at least the drinking water side. And with the project timeline, the way it's laid out, we will finish that project with just a couple months to spare to meet the deadline on that mandate to solve the treated water storage deficiencies. So it is my hope that we will approve this item and the next 2 and keep those plans on schedule for the community. Thank you.
Thanks. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Lindman. I think he's still at the podium, but I'm not able to see at this. Hi, Mr. Lindman.
Hi, Tom.
So I have a couple questions. When I looked at the information, it appeared that the increase was needed to pay some debt until a substantial portion of the facility was built or developed. Is that accurate? Is that kind of why this increase is needed early on?
Yeah, and so it's also actually for the DOA, Tom. So the Department of Administration, they determine what we can borrow. And so our, support for that borrowing is from the rates. And so before they would authorize our ability to borrow, with these loans through the DNR, we had to have the rates in place. And that's why the sewer rates are before you tonight, because they have to be approved first to support that level of borrowing.
Thank you, and that answers that question. And it was you had brought up a kind of concern about how this would impact low-income residents, and that's also a concern for me. In addition, just to how it would impact regular folks during a very difficult period. We saw some kind of changes in fees earlier because it's such a tough time for businesses, and I think a lot of people are hurting right now. I see you had talked about kind of perhaps revisiting the rate structure or methodology in the next year or so. Could you explain to me kind of why that isn't viable to do a little sooner? Is that very difficult, or is it just kind of humanly impossible at this point to revisit how those rates are structured kind of in the immediate future?
Yeah, I think what we'd like to do, I think what we'd like to do is we'd like to do it both on the water and the sewer at the same time. And so we know that because the Public Service Commission regulates the water rates, that's just a long drawn-out process in itself, 6 to 8 months on their review. And then we also need time for our financial consultants to establish what the best rate case would be in our rate structure. And so before we actually submit the case, they'll be working with the PSC to do that. And then once we kind of get that buy-in from the PSC, then we will move that over to the sewer, and try to do the same thing there. And so it is, I mean, it's not something that we can do in just a few months right now, but it is something we will be taking a look at after the first of the year.
Thank you, and I appreciate your circumstances and the time sensitivity. I think for me, just because of the large percentage increase, I believe 63% over 3 years roughly, I think it would just be important for me to know if it would be possible. Is it viable to revisit that rate structure? Because it will be a very hard sell and a big concern, I think, for my constituents to see that type of large percentage increase, no matter how it's segmented over 3 years. And I think what would be important for me to know is if it's just not viable to revisit the rate structure sooner than later. And if you tell me, hey, that's not viable, we can't do it, that would be one thing, I think, in how I assess this. But if it's possible, but it's just highly uncomfortable, that would be a different way I would look at it. So I think tonight, if there's any information more you could share on that, that would help inform my decision. And then the last question, this is a brief one. It was, I've heard there are going to be more rigorous standards that must be met, and that is part of the rationale for some of these major updates and so forth. Whose standards are those?
They're established by the DNR. They regulate the wastewater side and what we need to do with our discharge permit, and then also on the water side to make sure we maintain safe drinking water.
So those are DNR standards, and the city intends to comply with standard DNR standards in this case. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, absolutely, at a minimum.
Right. We didn't ask DHS to write a letter and give us a reason to say circumvent those standards, right? We're just complying with the standards.
Yeah, I am chuckling a little bit, Tom, since you can't see me, but yes, you are correct.
Now I can, Mr. Lemon. I'm laughing too on my end a little bit. So, yes, I think the question is no, we didn't do that, and I agree wholeheartedly with not doing that. I think we should rigorously and consistently follow DNR standards. So thank you for that information, and it was very helpful.
Thank you. I guess I just wanted to throw a little something out. We talked about the lifeline rates, and that's what we were talking about when it comes to folks that use, I think generally it's between 0 and 2,000 gallons. They would get a lower rate to protect those lower income users and lower usage users. I'm looking at my notes from that meeting, and that was recommended for the drinking water side, but not for the sewer side. I believe that's what we ended up deciding on. And so Whitewater is one of those municipalities that does have this lifeline rate. So we as in the utility commission are going to look into it and we can ask for that in 2021 for a 2022 implementation. And I don't know if you read all the minutes from that meeting, the Utility Commission meeting, but Commissioner Robinson made a motion to cut the rate down for that first year to hopefully help folks who may be suffering from, COVID-related funds lost. So that's one thing we tried to do. We had a long discussion about that. So that rate increase is heavy on everybody's minds, so. I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I would agree. I mean, when we're talking a 60% rate increase on the utility, it's significant. It's not exciting for me to be up here and asking you to make a vote on this. But I will stand up here and tell you that these projects are vital to the life and health of the utility moving forward into the future. And so this is a step in the right direction. And I highly recommend these projects. We've been looking at these for 3 years, going through the facility planning process, looking at different options, looking at regionalization, looking at partnering with Rib Mountain. All of these considerations through the last 3 years. And I believe that we have found, moving forward, that this is going to be the least expensive to the users and also set us up for a future generations to having safe water and collection of wastewater into the future.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, I think we're ready to vote on the ordinance amending section 1364020, basis for charges, the sewer service charges.
Peckham? Martins? Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wadinski?
Aye.
Mcelhaney?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson? Herbst?
Aye.
Larson?
No.
Ryan?
No.
Motion passes 9-2.
Thank you. We're moving on to file number 200608, the resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of up to $44,756,287 for the water system revenue bonds, Series 2020B, and providing for other details and covenants with respect thereto. Do I have a motion? Motion by Rasmussen. Do I have a second? Second by Herbst. Is there any discussion? Looks like there isn't any discussion, and we're ready to vote.
Peckham?
Aye.
Martins? Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wadinski?
Aye.
Mcelhaney?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Larson?
No.
Ryan?
No.
Motion passes 9-2.
Thank you. We're moving on to file number 200609, resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of up to $89,923,286 for the sewer system revenue bonds, Series 2020C, and providing for other details and covenants with respect thereto. Do I have a motion? Motion by Watson. Do I have a second? Second by Rasmussen. Is there any discussion? I think we're ready to vote.
Ryan?
No.
Larson?
No.
Herbst?
Aye.
Watson? Rasmussen?
Aye.
Mcelhaney?
Aye.
Wadinski?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Martins? Peckham? Motion passes 9-2.
Right, thank you. I would now entertain a motion to suspend the rules, 6B, filing, and 12A, referral of resolutions. This will require a 2/3 vote. Motion by Neal. Do I have a second? Second by Peckham, and I guess we're ready to vote on that.
Ryan?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Watson? Rasmussen?
Aye.
Peckham? Martins? Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wadinski?
Aye.
McElhaney.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
All right, thank you. The rules are suspended. We're moving on to file number 020432, ordinance amending Chapter 2.16, Standing Rules of the Common Council, Rule 2, quorum required, and Rule 4, absence of members. Is there any discussion on this? I think we're ready to vote.
Do we have a motion?
Oh, I guess we'll have a motion by Neal. Take a second. Second by Watson, thank you. Now we're ready to vote.
McElhaney.
Aye.
Wodinski.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Killian.
Aye.
Martins.
Aye.
Peckham. Rasmussen.
Aye.
Watson.
Aye.
Herbst.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Ryan.
I guess I didn't see the information, so,
Okay. All right.
so what is it about?
It's, I don't have the ordinance pulled up on my screen.
Is this the
but
one that allows the continued use of
There is
WebEx?
345 pages in the
Yep.
packet.
Continued use of WebEx until October. Continued use of WebEx, the tool.
All right, aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to item number 000808, resolution approving the amendment to the agreement between the City of Wausau and Associated Trust Company, NA, and withdrawal of funds from the Wausau Cemetery Perpetual Trust Fund. Do I have a motion? Motion by Watson, second by Herbst. Any discussion here? Alder Ryan?
I was looking at some of the pages of the information of the backup and such, and the Wausau Cemetery was where we recently had the shootings in the last year. And I guess I was just kind of surprised that not included was the information about who was going to be the designated person replacing, I think it was Ms. Grimm. And was there something that the cemetery needed to update when she passed as her replacement?
Oh, yes. Could you tell us your name?
I'm Alan Solomonson, president of the Cemetery Association that runs Pine Grove Cemetery. And we have a manager now who's been on duty for about 3 months, and it's Casey Colbus. And as you indicated, it's been a real confusing time to get these things done. Thank you, though.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Okay, I think we're ready to vote.
McElhaney.
Aye.
Wodinski.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Killian.
Aye.
Martins.
Aye.
Peckham. Ryan.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Herbst.
Aye.
Watson. Rasmussen.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Great, thank you. Moving on to our last item, file number 200607. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee approving intergovernmental agreement for law enforcement services for the 2020 Democratic National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Do I have a motion? Motion by Herbst. Second by Ryan. Is there any discussion on this? Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I'd just like to offer on behalf of the Finance Committee, we did look at this, and the question was asked about who will be covering the expenses for the officers when they're down there helping, if they're called to do so. And they did indicate that there would not be a cost to the city for those, for lodging or food or any of the travel expenses for those officers to provide that mutual aid. So we did approve it unanimously in Finance.
Is there any other discussion? I see, Tom, you have your hand up. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wondered, is the chief or deputy chief on the line or in the audience? And could, if they would like, could they provide, hello, chief, just your opinion and position on this matter, as, so we could hear a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Killian. So this is, a request from the City of Milwaukee for assistance with the Democratic National Convention in the City of Milwaukee. And obviously, there's a huge need for law enforcement resources to provide for the safety and security of that area of the community when this convention's going on. A couple of years ago, the state of Wisconsin set aside some funds for specifically for mobile field force teams to be able to train on a statewide level, to have the same training so that we can integrate teams in large events like this. They provided funds for the training and for a lot of the equipment. And the intention from the state of Wisconsin was to be able to provide trained teams to be able to activate for large events like this. So I think it's our responsibility. We accepted those funds. We have a trained team to be able to help in this way. And we are very fortunate in our area that we don't have a need for these teams a lot. In order for our teams to be able to get experience in some of these situations, I think it's important for our officers to be able to respond and assist communities when they're having some of these events going on, to be able to garner some of that experience in case we should ever have a need in our community. We have not just trained staff, but experienced staff. And then lastly, if we do have, a situation here where we would need to deploy a team like that, and we need additional resources, the more we are willing to respond and help people when they are in need, the more likely they are to respond to help us when we're in need. And that's what law enforcement does across the state in this type of fashion, is help out when significant incidents are occurring throughout the state. So I think for those reasons, it's important that our teams go down there and help out with the Democratic National Convention.
Thank you for that information.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Alder Neal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just, with the volatile nature of things in urban politics right now throughout the country, there is potential for some significant unrest in Milwaukee during the convention. That, I think, really goes without saying that can happen. Recently, throughout the country, we've seen examples of police departments at their very best in some cases and at their very worst in others. The Wausau Police Department has always proven to be of the highest level of professionalism, compassion for people, and concern for safety. If we do pass this tonight, I'm confident that our officers will go there and give a great example of how to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? I think we're ready to vote on the resolution approving intergovernmental agreement for law enforcement services for the 2020 Democratic National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Ryan?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Herps?
Aye.
Watson? Aye. Rasmussen?
Aye.
Peckham? Aye. Martins?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wadinsky?
Aye.
Mcelhaney? Aye. Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, moving on to the last item on our agenda, public comment and suggestions. Yes, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Carl Martins. All you guys may not know me, but I'm Michael Martin's son. But I want to ask you guys a question. It's about the protests and everything. What is Wausau doing to eliminate racism, to make sure none of this is going to happen? No cops are going to kill anyone here. I'd like to know what is Wausau's plan to make sure that doesn't happen here.
Thank you. We can't have the discussion now, but we will have a discussion at a later date. Thank you for your comments. Is there any other discussion? Public. Alder Herbst.
I would just like to make a comment, if I may. I'm not sure if this went to all the other older people here tonight, but as I was getting ready to close my iPad, I have an email from Shannon Wapples. It says, drownings, I will blame you for all children / people who drown in the central Wisconsin area. Lifeguards save lives everywhere. By the way, my child now can go to work at the grocery store. They are essential and be more exposed to any and all virus.
Is there any other comment? All right, I would take a motion to adjourn. I guess it, motion by Martin, second by Neal. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
So if nobody